Welcome to Women, Men, and Relationships. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. Quick reminder, we are heading into the end of October, and the 30-day manifestation challenge starts November 1st, and you do need to be registered pretty soon in order to participate. So if you're interested in joining the last free 30-day manifestation challenge of the year, come on over to jjflazanes.com and click on the free tools and resources. Last Christmas, I bought a bunch of books for clients and friends and myself, and the book was the Ketogenic Cookbook. And just because I have to research and learn about all the different things that I wanted to try, Jeannie Peters and Alan Peters had been educating me on the ketogenic diet prior to me buying the book. But I thought, you know what? I just need some more ideas. So I purchased the book. It's a beautiful book. There are some wonderful recipes in it. I have barely scratched the surface. But I was reading about the author, Jimmy Moore, and he had a podcast when I got to the end of it. Not only does he have a podcast, he's got some of the longest running podcast, health podcast of all times. He's been doing this for a very long time, a pioneer in many ways, and I really appreciated that I reached out to him and he wrote back. So I offered him a spot on my show, and I recorded this yesterday, and it's being published today being October 18th, 2018. So with that in mind, we do cover many things. It's not just nutrition information. It's spiritual, it's emotional, it's relationship, it's motivation and purpose and mission. So no matter which show you're getting this episode on, it does have a buy-in to the topics that I do talk about on this channel. So I promise you it is well worth the show. For nothing else, then we are all human beings on a journey to be the best we can be. And when your diet and your exercise and your self-care get in the way of that, then it doesn't allow you to be your true self. So how we feed ourselves really helps and affects how we are and how we show up in the world. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Welcome to the show, Jimmy.
Hey, what's going on, JJ?
So you have to be the most professional podcaster I've ever met, because even though I only know podcasters nowadays, you're on what, episode 1434?
And that's just on my flagship show, the Live and La Vida Low Carb Show. I do 4 other podcasts as well.
Okay, well, I have 6, so I beat you there. I'm kidding.
You're doing well.
It's not a contest.
I have 4 that are retired.
Well, yeah, mine is the reason I have so many. It's the repurposing of the content I already have, because I've spanned so many different topics in the health and wellness field that
exactly
relationships and psychology and even spirituality. So that's the reason. It's not because I'm addicted to podcasting, but
and most of that information is evergreen. I did some podcasts 5 years ago that if I re-aired them today, and I sometimes do this when I need a break and I don't have a guest lined up, I'll air an older episode and people are like, oh my gosh, where's this information? I'm like, I talked about this 5 years ago. So that's the beauty of podcasting, is these evergreens become great quality content for years to come.
Totally. Absolutely. I'm all about the repurposing, because even though I've moved past where I was, probably where you were 5 years ago, there are people who are finding it today who need to start back there, who aren't up to speed to this place. So I appreciate that you said yes, because you don't know each other. But I picked up your ketogenic cookbook, and I actually made one of the recipes today. I thought, you know what? I have the time.
Nice.
Let me
Which
make
one?
another. I did the porridge, the apple porridge.
Ah, very nice. Yeah, Maria Emmerich, my co-author on that book, is just a genius at coming up with really delicious recipes.
Yeah, I'm a cook and a chef, and I've been paleo for a while. I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free, I'm Greek and Italian. So cooking is definitely something I have a passion for. And so I opened up the page just to the right thing today, and I thought, that sounds good.
Nice.
I'll have that for breakfast. And
all right, I want to hear about at Christmas time. I want to hear that you did the gingerbread house that doesn't have any nut flowers.
Oh, is that in this book?
It's in that same cookbook. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. I haven't made it to the desserts yet.
Yes.
But for a lot of people, I span all kinds of different audiences. The biggest audience I have right now is mostly spirituality, but I've been a personal trainer for 20 years, and I'm about connecting dots. And so what I want to go over today obviously is your story, because I want you to share your story from your book, and I'm sure pass that into, because you've come a long way, and I have questions about how you've lived. Like Living La Vida Low Carb is your podcast, your main podcast that I referred to when I said you're on episode 1434, which is amazing. And I stopped counting on some of them, like my Fit to Love podcast. I stopped numbering them. But you know what? I think I'm going to go back and count just because I'm curious. I have no idea. I ended
Yes.
season 1 and 2 with, I don't know, 350 shows. So I'm sure I have to be at least to around 500 or 600 by now. So
Yes.
I'm going to go count. But I want to know, again, where you started. And I know that based on your story, but my audience doesn't. And while I could tell it, I don't want to spend that time. I want them to hear it from you and your struggles, because it's more personal that way. So why don't we start back at the beginning of your struggles with weight, your health struggles, and let's give the highlights of that and then bring us to today.
Sure. And by the way, if you want to go there spiritually, I am a Christian and I'm very happy to talk that realm as well. So, my story, I was 410 pounds at the age of 32 back in 2003. And I was basically eating a crap diet. Most people do that. And especially when you learn that. I grew up, my mom was a single mom, and so she would always feed us what I now refer to as crappy garbage, Blueberry Crunch and Doritos and Coca-Cola and fast food. It was just, that was normal. There was nothing strange about that in our household because that's what mama fed us. And what was really strange, though, I didn't see it at the time, but I look back on it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was weird. Mama bought into the whole hook, line, and sinker, the whole low-fat diet thing. So she had fat-free ice cream and Diet Coke and rice cakes and all this kind of stuff all over the house, juxtaposed to all this junk food that the kids were eating, my older brother Kevin and my younger sister Beverly. And we would eat that stuff and didn't think twice about it. So when we became adults, we all kept growing bigger and bigger because we kept eating in the same way that we learned. And people often say, well, why didn't you just switch over to eating better foods once you became an adult? And I'm like, why would I? That my normal was junk food. And so why would I suddenly jump to asparagus and grass-fed beef or whatever? No, yeah, I had to learn that later. And so the later for me became in 2003 when I got a diet book for Christmas from my mother-in-law. God bless her. She gave me a diet book that I thought, okay, great. Thanks, Mom. I'm fat. Appreciate it. Captain Obvious. So yeah, I read that book. Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution was the book. It was a low-carb diet. And I read the book from cover to cover between Christmas and New Year's. And I officially said that Dr. Atkins is a wackadoodle. What do you mean I have to eat more fat in my diet? He's a cardiologist telling people to eat the very thing that's going to give them a heart attack and give them heart disease. And then eat less carbs. I'm going to be lethargic. Where am I going to get any energy from? This just didn't make any sense. But I had tried all the diets that Mama had done over the years to lose weight, and she never kept off any weight or really got healthy eating low fat. So I was like, what the heck? I haven't tried high fat, revolutionary concept to shift over to a high fat, low carb diet. So I started this January 1st, 2004, and it started as a New Year's resolution to lose weight. And it ended up being a new life resolution to live this way, to be healthy for the rest of my life. And yes, I did lose quite a bit of weight in that year, 180 pounds to be exact. But I came off of 3 prescription medications. And these days, all these years later, after that experience, I'm a little bigger in weight than I was at my very lowest, but I'm still off of every prescription medication and all the genetic tendencies for heart disease that run in my family that actually killed my brother Kevin at the age of 41. I'm bucking that trend thanks to a low carb diet, which then turned into a ketogenic diet. We can talk about the distinction between those here in a minute.
First of all, I feel sad yet, there's always, when you have contrast in your life, right? There's a reason for it. If we embrace sort of those obstacles in our lives, it takes us to more clarity, and our lives change because of that, right? So without
I
all
agree.
of the things that had happened to you, you wouldn't be where you are today.
That's
And
right.
and so for, there's I heard when you got the diet book, I mean, that just, I shrunk like, oh,
Oh, that
because
wasn't the first time I got a diet book. She'd given me like one year I got Dr. Phil's book, Today Can Be a Changing Day in Your Life. And I'm like, no, Dr. Phil, it's still a low fat diet. So she was not the subtle one, my mother-in-law.
yeah. So I feel for you on that one. But also thank God for just where you've gotten to, because one of the things that I know, I work in a medical clinic here in Southern California with a functional medicine physician and registered dietitian, and they both do all kinds of, mostly keto and paleo and whole food and food as medicine, and get you off medications and use food as nutrition and medicine. And I've
Is
been
that
in
Brett
this
Sure?
world.
Who's that?
Jeannie Peters. Do you know Jeannie Peters?
I do
She
not. Who's the dietitian?
Jeannie Peters is a
Oh,
dietitian.
who's the doctor?
Dr. Alan Peters, her husband.
Oh, Al. Okay. No, I don't know them. I need to be connected to them. That's
Yes,
cool.
yes, you do. And their functional medicine, bioidentical hormones, everything that's, again,
Love
natural,
it.
looking at how our body optimally works, and not accepting aging as a death sentence, but as we can
Yes.
actually supplement. So in the practices, and as things sort of progress, you have the naysayers, you have, and obviously you've been doing this for a long time. And I do want to talk about the distinctions between low carb and ketogenic. And I want to talk about why I didn't like Dr. Atkins. Was it just because, I mean, the keto feels like it's more researched. Maybe
Yes.
it's because of the time and the era in which the information is landing on us, and the things that we know now that we didn't know then. Because the
Right.
paradigms need to change over time, right? We were taught that because somebody, Jeannie goes over this. She's probably the most interviewed person on my show when it comes to nutrition, because her wealth of knowledge is that and beyond. And I know Dr. Johnny Bowden as well. He and I we've been on panels together before in different conferences. So we all kind of run in the same circles over here in California.
Yep.
And the ketogenic diet, of course, the first thing that comes up for most people is about cholesterol. And you just mentioned about heart disease. And I was looking on Amazon today, because I know that you have 7 books.
I do, and I'm about to release my 8th in November. Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Let's have you back for that, and talk about your next book if you want to come back on the show.
I
But
love that. Real Food Keto is what it's called.
Real Food Keto. Oh, I see it. No. Is it on
Yeah,
Real
it's
Food
on
Keto?
Amazon.
It's on Amazon already. Oh, it's
Yep.
a pre-order. Here we go.
Pre-order.
Okay. So where's the 8th book? Because I'm looking at.
So my very first book, I don't ever talk about it. It was right after my weight loss experience in 2004, was called Living La Vida Low Carb.
Yep, I
And
see
then I
that.
did a second self-published book, 21 Life Lessons from Living La Vida Low Carb, in 2009. Then I got a major publisher on board, and I did Cholesterol Clarity, Keto Clarity, the Ketogenic Cookbook, the Complete Guide to Fasting, the Keto Cure, and about to come out with Real Food Keto.
Yeah, let's talk about the Keto Cure, because the diabetes, thyroid, cholesterol, weight loss, and more. That is probably, without anyone doing any homework. And again, these are people who still think coconut oil is bad for you. So they're, talk to me about, yes, you're not a doctor, but you co-write all of your books with physicians to back up
Yep.
your information, your science. You're living this. You take your own blood work. You see your physicians. You know what the results are. You're living it. So let's talk about the kind of oppositions that come into the keto diet, which are that it's high cholesterol, which is going to lead to heart disease, right? And then fat equals fat, which, do you believe people still believe that? Eating fat makes you
Yes,
fat.
I believe people still believe that.
Yeah, eating fat is bad for me. So why don't we go over some of those myths about keto diet that you can answer, because I'm sure you come up against it with, what you do, and even just talking to people that you just meet and say, oh, keto diet, isn't that going to cause saturated fat to cause more cholesterol and heart disease? So please.
It's so funny because I literally just yesterday was at the post office, and the lady that was taking my package, she knows what I do for a living, writing books. And she's like, and I sent her some of my chicken eggs. I have 27 backyard chickens. and brought her some eggs. And she's like, "Oh, aren't you worried about the cholesterol?" I'm like, "Here we go."
Right. There's like
And so I went in my spiel about how the body needs cholesterol, that without cholesterol, you'd actually die if you didn't have cholesterol. And so many functions in the body, if you didn't have saturated fat, if you didn't have cholesterol in your diet, then you would basically not be able to make the hormones
Yep.
that make your body run. You wouldn't be able to have bioproduction to be able to digest food well. I mean, there's just so many upsides to having more fat and more cholesterol in your body, in terms of in the diet, than not. And I think what has happened is, and even my own wife, Christine, experienced this. She went through a period of time where she ate very low fat. Now, she never had a weight problem. She just was told it was healthy. And so that's what she obediently did. Well, guess what it did? It totally burned out her gallbladder to the point that she had to have it removed. And so now today she has no gallbladder, and she has to take digestive enzymes to help her emulsify fat and break it down, and digestive enzymes and all kind of stuff, ox bile, whatever it takes to help break down the fat. That was preventable had she just eaten fat to begin with and let the body function as it's supposed to. So yeah, these notions are still out there. The cholesterol one is a curious one because a lot of the fear over cholesterol is, whoa, we have total cholesterol that's over 200. We have LDLC, a calculated number, that's over 100, and that's dastardly for your health. And I'm going, if you lived in 1950, maybe in 2018, the markers that people pay attention to have nothing to do with total cholesterol or your LDL cholesterol. It's triglyceride to HDL ratio. And if that ratio is under 2 and optimally under 1, you are rocking it in your heart health. My ratio, by the way, is right around 0.8 in the ratio. And so that's what you want. And we're also looking at LDL particle size. And of course, you say that to the common person and they're like, what the heck is an LDL particle? Well, people think LDL is one number, but it's actually a multiplicity of numbers, of which you want very few small dense LDL and you want more large fluffy LDL. So it has nothing to do with that number that your doctor runs on his on the lab. And so if it comes back 100, you don't know if it's mostly the large fluffy or the breakdown of the small dense. And so you have to run a test that's a little more sophisticated to see what that breakdown is. It's called NMR lipoprofile, and it tells the real story about where you are. And then, of course, if you want to go even more sophisticated, you can actually look for signs of actual disease. Anybody that's taken a statin drug today and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I want to come off of this, ask your doctor if he will write you a prescription to go get a CT heart scan. So here in South Carolina, where I live, the CT heart scan is about $100. And you go down and it's basically a 3-minute test. They do a CT scan of your chest. What they're looking for is calcified plaque. If there ain't no calcified plaque in there, guess what? You don't have heart disease. You have no reason to be taking that statin medication. The sophistication of the technology, JJ, is such these days that anybody that just completely relies on their doctor sight unseen to give them the full facts about how to take care of their health, they're just shooting blind. It's Russian roulette with your health.
I agree. I agree totally. There are still so many people who are eating egg whites, especially women. I'm like, stop eating just egg whites. You need the cholesterol to make your hormones, because what are you lacking after menopause? You're lacking hormones. And if you don't want to supplement with bioidentical and you're afraid of all that conversation, we still need to add cholesterol back in your diet to make the hormones.
Oh,
So
and it's even worse than that with the egg whites, by the way. There is a substance in egg whites that if it makes up 5% of your calories, which a lot of women especially are eating egg white omelets for breakfast, and they're not eating very many calories in the day. And so if 5% of your diet is made up of egg whites, you have this anti-nutrient that's in egg whites known as avidin. Look it up, you guys. Avidin is nothing to play around with. And if you do, then you're going to start having fertility issues. You're going to bring on symptoms of PCOS and all kinds of other menstrual issues that you just don't want.
Okay, I'm going to look that up. That's the first time I've heard of that. So thank you, Jimmy. I have to ask, what did you do before you started your podcast and started writing books?
It's so funny because everybody asks that question. Did you train in any way? I was just one of those curious minds. I was always the nerd growing up, won all the spelling bees, and was pretty good academically in school. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and English. That's where I got my love for writing. I remember I took a lot of English classes in undergrad, and my favorite classes were the ones where I got to write essays and pages upon pages upon pages. Thus, how I got loving writing so much. And then I went and got a master's degree in public policy, which is so funny because I'm now trying to change policy when it relates to nutrition and health in this country. So someday I'll use that degree, but for now, it's mostly the writing and the speaking. So what did I do occupationally before this? A lot of customer service types of jobs. So I tell people most of the jobs that I did leading up to now being a blogger and author and podcaster, they all kind of trained me for what I do now. So I did a little bit of Christian radio back in the 1990s. That was Amy Grant. Now here's Michael W. Smith. That's pretty much what I did. And then I did some customer service jobs in retail where I got used to talking to people and schmoozing them a little bit of the marketing aspect of things. I worked for a company where I answered all the emails for this major company that got 3,000 emails a day, and I was the guy that answered them. Now I get about 600 emails in my own world now, and I'm like, that's nothing. I used to do 3,000 a day. So it's kind of funny how God knew I needed to be prepared for what I'm doing now, and He was training me when I didn't realize it.
Well, lucky me, because you answered my email. So if you hadn't gone through that training, we would not be having this conversation. So I definitely appreciate that. Jimmy, can I ask you what your birthday is? Not your year, just your birth month and day.
Yeah, December 27th.
You're a Capricorn. Okay.
I am a Capricorn.
Okay, good, good. All right. So it's fascinating to me because that usually the people who are the most educated and knowledgeable about subjects that have to do with health in certain areas are sometimes people who've experienced some kind of trauma, pain, or situation where it's forced you to learn. I'm not saying everybody, but there really are a lot of people whose lives transform, and then they want to share it with others. That's really the fuel to the fire of getting the information out there. And then of course, when it's coupled with that you're really good at learning and speaking and understanding and researching, then it becomes a passion that you don't even realize that you're so good at it. It's like you were meant to do it, but you had no idea you'd ever be doing it until you had to have the contrast to bring you here. So not only is it, because some people go into medicine because, let's say, money, like doctors might say, I want to be a doctor because I can make a lot of money. That's not a passion that makes you want to learn and continue to dig for truth and necessarily research when it's driven by financial. There's nothing wrong with being driven by financial, but I think if there's nothing underneath that, then we have a disconnect. It's not necessarily
You'll
in
get
alignment.
burnout too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're always looking at things through one sort of small little pinhole versus if you're on a mission, which you're on a mission, I'm on a mission, and that mission
Yep.
will carry us in every shape and form, in every new technology that comes up, every new piece of information we learn, and we're going to adapt because what's underneath that is that mission. And my mission, one of the missions I have absolutely just like yours, is for people to understand sort of truth and healing, and for them to stop struggling and to know that there are answers out there, and to stop listening to just conventional Western medicine, and to take responsibility for all aspects of their lives, especially their health. Now,
I knew I was going to like you.
Thank you. Well, I there's time and place for certain Western medicine. I'm not going to discount that. But people don't realize that their Western medical doctors have been, their education has been funded by the pharmaceutical industry. So
That's
we
right.
have to look at the truth of the politics, and I am not political at all. But when it comes to where's your information coming from, and why would you not just question a little bit why? I've had doctors where they've said to me, you have to do this. And I've said, well, but I don't want to do that. There has to be, or I had a doctor once say to me, well, there's nothing we can do. I said, that's bullshit. What do you mean there's nothing we can do? There's always something we can do. I didn't have this before. I have this now, which means
Right.
something off, which I can then fix it and it will be healed. And that's when I really got that I really have to take control of my health on a different level. And so I appreciate now knowing, because I didn't before, all these books that you have. I love, because I know Dr. Johnny Bowden's done a book on heart disease as well. And I don't know if he was connecting
Yep.
it to keto, but I know he was connecting it to fat, and Dr. Mercola and all his work on fat, and everyone trying to get out there and just change the conversation that fat doesn't make you fat. Fat does not cause heart disease. And that's what everybody is saying. So what about tell me about a little bit more about your brother and the difference between where he was with his food and where you are, and with your labs and things like that, and things that you experienced.
Yeah, so it was actually my brother Kevin who inspired me to want to give a crap about my diet to begin with. It was 1999 when he had a series of heart attacks in the span of 1 week that nearly killed him at the age of 32. And I was 4 years younger than him at the time, 28. And I'm like, holy crap, that's my lot in life if I don't change things. So I, of course, defaulted to low fat there for a couple of years and was kind of lost in Never Land trying to find my way before my mother-in-law gave me that diet book for Christmas. So thank you, Mom. I'm glad in hindsight now. I was kind of pissed at the time, but I'm glad in hindsight that she gave me that book. But yeah, so my brother Kevin, who incidentally, it was 10 years ago yesterday that he died. It was the anniversary yesterday as of the recording of this. And so very prescient on my mind thinking about my brother Kevin. So thank you for asking about him. Yeah, he was in a bad relationship that forced him to eat really bad. At least, thankfully, he never turned to drugs or alcohol as his numbing agent. He chose crap in terms of the food that he ate. And so, but it made him bigger and bigger, and it gave him heart disease, and it led to type 2 diabetes, and eventually led to his demise at the age of 41. So that was how he ate. And juxtaposed to that is how I ate. I gave up all of the junk food and I turned to real whole foods that nourish my body, that were mostly reduced in carbohydrates. So no grains, no sugars, no starches. It was a little bit meat heavy to begin with. I did learn to add in vegetables to that. I didn't naturally want to eat vegetables when I first started, but now I enjoy them. I enjoy having a nice spinach salad and mashed cauliflower and all the other things that people in our community like to eat. But that was the hugest difference. And I was off of the 16 cans of Coca-Cola that I used to down every single day. That did shift to Diet Coke when I first started, and then eventually off of the sodas altogether.
So I want to touch upon an emotional issue with food, because I think a lot of people who aren't willing to change, maybe it's because they're not pushed up against the wall with fear of dying or having someone close to them pass away that they can attribute to food or their environment and conditions. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
time, and I'm so glad that you said about that he didn't turn to drugs or alcohol, but he used food to numb. So I talk a lot about addiction, and I've learned a lot about addiction, and food is one of our biggest addictions because it's socially acceptable, and people don't really look at themselves as an addict when they're eating, because we have to eat to live. But it's that
That's right.
difference of when we want to numb and how we numb and what foods we use to numb. And there's the biochemical aspect of food and what things that causes. When people remove gluten and dairy, when I work with them, usually there's a bit of brain fog that lifts and clarity and energy that comes out. Some people notice when they go gluten-free, just gluten-free, we're not even talking about low carb yet, gluten-free, that their mood changes. And all of a sudden, and that's still with some sugar in their diet, but when people remove sugar altogether or really reduce it down to a keto level or a little bit above, the cravings go away, the mood shifts, their energy's better. And so definitely there's the biochemical piece of that helps us to create an environment in which we're reacting to. So maybe we're feeling tired, we're feeling grumpy or cranky or emotional. Remove those foods and feel better. But now we have still the issue of that there are lots of people, even when that happens, that I still want to numb, and I'm still numbing with food. So
Yep.
talk to me about if you had to go back and diagnose yourself, were you using food to numb, or was it literally just I didn't know any better?
Oh yeah, I was numbing, big time. I didn't have a good childhood. I was bounced around between my parents. They were divorced when I was very young, and then when my mom's new husband didn't like me because I was a very strong-willed, intelligent kid, he told her it's him or it's me. Which one are you going to get rid of? And so I was forced to go live with my dad, who was very well known to be an abusive person. And he beat the crap out of me very often. So, yeah, it took most of my 20s to get over that. And of course, most of my 20s was when I went from 250 to 300 to 350 to 400, all the way until 410 when I started this low carb journey.
And what changed for you emotionally when you went on the low carb journey and lost the first 180 pounds in that first year?
hmm Yeah, even far before that, I forgave my dad, and I think that forgiveness was the first step in me saying, "Okay, I no longer have to look over my shoulder, thinking he's judging me still. He's gone. I'm an adult now. It's time to move on with your life." Because every single job I ever had, and this is getting deep, thank you for that. Every single job I've ever had before what I do now, I always felt like I had more to offer, but nobody could see it. I could see it. I could see that I had value. I could see that there was something that I could provide, not realizing that I could be providing it for my own business, and that's what I'm doing now. But then it was just I kept feeling the limitations that I was imposing on myself because of that lack of kind of confidence and self worth, which I was covering up with food to kind of numb the pain that I had dealt with. And it took a very long time. And I was actually married in my early 20s. So my poor wife, Christine, had to deal with that transition from me being this really angry, upset young man, until she finally said, "Whoa, what's happened to you?" I said, "I let it all go." And it was all the difference in the world. And it was at that point that her mom gave me that diet book and I was ready.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing. And yes, you're welcome. I only go deep because it's to me that's where, because how many people do you know? You can tell them what to eat. You can tell them I can give people a amazing food plan and amazing exercise routine. Whether you do it or not is not about the information. It's about your relationship to yourself, the relationship to the information, the desire and the why of what keeps you going. And if that's fueled by what I consider either love or fear. My second book was called Fit to Love: How to Get Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit to Attract the Love of Your Life. And the basis of the book is that the love of your life is you, and about that relationship that you have with you and your own self-care. And in my
I
work,
love it.
noticing over the years that people, thank you, that people over the years have such a negative emotional relationship to exercise. And that's why most people don't do it, because they see it as punishment. And they do self-care, dieting or whatever, because they hate themselves. And that's what ends up
See
fueling,
that
which is why they don't continue doing it.
they needed to call it fex exercise so it could be another F word.
There you go. So to me, I have to connect those things, because there's
Yes.
the idea of the information, which is very important and can be absolutely life changing. But if we don't meld that into an emotional, deeper connection to either a purpose or a respect and honoring of who we are, and in your case as a Christian, right, your relationship to God, or your time on this earth and what your mission is supposed to be, or your purpose, if we don't connect it to something bigger and more meaningful, and again infuse it with, there's only two real emotions, there's negative and positive. Positive is love and
Yep.
negative is fear, basically, right? So if we're not infusing what we're doing with a positive emotion, then then willpower will eventually fade out. And this is leading to a question I actually posted way too late, and I apologize. I was making breakfast. I'm like, oh, I should post it. I'm going to interview you today and ask anybody what I should ask you. So we have one This is Alex. Hello, JJ. I'm a personal trainer out of Gilbert, Arizona. And my question for both of you and Jimmy is, how do you both go about transitioning a client from having a high carb, moderate protein, high fat, mainly bad fats way of eating to going toward this type of eating lifestyle? What is your approach?
I just think you share the vision. And I think you say, look, if you do this and you commit to this for a period of time, and I generally say 30 to 60 days, but you get a buy in factor. You say, you know what? If you do the things that I tell you over the next 30 days, you will see this, this, and this. And so you talk about the hunger control, and you talk about the energy, and you talk about the brain health and the mood stabilization, all of the things that we know very well that a ketogenic diet helps with, and you cast that vision, then they kind of go, okay, I'm still skeptical, but let me give it a go. And I think if you lay it out exactly what they have to expect, that maybe in the early days, you're going to have a little bit of issues. Here's how you fix those issues, talking about the keto flu, fix your electrolytes early on. I think if you just show that you care, most people will say, yeah, I'll give it a go. You're going to be there with me? Sure, I'll do that. So that's what I would do.
I would answer that, Alex, also that you also want to understand how your client receives information. So if they're the kind of person who really thrives on details and facts, then you want to get them information. And so find out what their
Mm.
objectives are. What are the obstacles you have to overcome? Is it because they fear heart disease? Is it because they fear, find out what those are and answer them. If it's not that, if it's just a lifestyle thing, then definitely what Jimmy was saying too, make sure that you can outline what that would look like. Because I think for a lot of people, when I transition people off of gluten and dairy before they become paleo and they go from sort of the standard American diet, that sad diet, they think, oh my God, they just think about restriction. What can't I have? And until you show them and replace things, like when people come to my house, I cook and I bake. And while it's mostly still paleo, in fact, yesterday, my boyfriend, who is also a podcaster and owns a podcast production company, his mother's 85-year-old mother drove across country from DC to LA with her boyfriend. And we had them for dinner. And he said, well, can you get a loaf of bread? I said, absolutely not. Get a loaf of bread for them. I said, if you want to buy it, that's one thing, but I will not serve anyone in my house what I won't eat. My
Right.
house is about experiencing foods and flavors that you otherwise don't get, that you can say, wow, that was delicious. And I had no idea it was good for me.
Again, I love you. You're awesome.
Thank you. I have a paleo cooking show, and it's for the reason that I wanted to show people that you can eat delicious foods any time of the year. Again, we're still talking about paleo, no keto. We're going to get to that in a minute. But if you can show them, and that's what I used to do for my clients. I used to have a lot of clients in Arizona, and I would travel there at least once a year and make them a meal. And I would make them foods that were all paleo and dairy-free and gluten-free. And they'd all be amazed that, wow, well, this is easy. Oh, I like that. So you have to get them over that, whatever their fears are in
Yeah.
terms of what they can't have. Because too many people think diet equals restriction instead of diet
Yes.
equals lifestyle, right?
Here, here.
Okay, so I have some questions, more questions for you, Jimmy, of course. So let's talk about some of those things that happen when you first go keto. Let's talk about constipation. I know some people that I've put on a keto diet and even on a dairy-free, because for me and for lots of people who can't digest dairy creates constipation. So let's take that dairy out of the equation and they're dairy
Right.
free and they're still having constipation. Why is that?
Yeah. Generally, they're not drinking enough water is the primary thing, and or perhaps early on, it may not be harmful to either up your green leafy vegetables, which you should be doing when you first start anyway, trying to incorporate nutrient dense foods like that. And as a last resort, you can use something like magnesium oxide if you have to, magnesium citrate. It might be a little bit too rough on the stomach, but magnesium can help make the bowels kind of go loosey-goosey on you a little bit if you're not moving. So I would take that strategy. More water first, more green leafy vegetables, as the second option, and then magnesium. And if you're still not pooping, you need to get milk of magnesia or something that will make you go.
I would recommend Dr. Schultz intestinal cleanse if you don't want to do milk of magnesium. I love his
Right.
intestinal cleanse. It's one of the best movers that it's so powerful, and you'll need one of them. Well, why does the constipation go away? I haven't been able to do or commit yet to a full like 30 days of keto. Does it tend to go away after? Does the body adapt?
I've never experienced it. So firsthand, I don't know why some people get it and others don't, other than the dehydration. Because when you first start on a ketogenic diet, your body is dumping a lot of water and that makes sense because you're trying to shift your body from being mostly a sugar burner to being a fat burner. Well, where's all the sugar stored? It's in the glycogen stores of your muscles. Where's the glycogen stored? It's in water in those muscles. So when you first start eating keto, all of your body's water stores are kind of getting dumped. So you have to replenish those. So if you start on a ketogenic diet and you're constipated really early on, it's very possible you're not replenishing those water stores that were in your glycogen stores.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Now, I want to know how, people sort of fluctuate on any new lifestyle up and down. Usually people are pretty committed for a while and then sort of life sets in. So let's talk about where you found your sweet spot and if you're still 100% keto, or do you do sort of more strict at certain times? How do you balance? I mean, you've been keto now since what, 2004? So let's talk. That's a long time. It's 14 years.
Yeah.
Tell us about that journey.
So the way I describe my diet these days, by the way, is I'm primaleo ketogenic. So I'm primal, a nod to my friend Mark Sisson, because I do still allow quality dairy products into my diet. I'm paleo, because I infuse the real food aspect of it, which I'm a huge fan of. I have 27 backyard chickens and grow 24/7, 365. I grow a garden. I have a greenhouse and various places in my yard when the weather's right to grow garden. And we actually use that, by the way, to help feed the community that can't afford to buy good quality foods too. So we have a heart for other people eating this way. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing is incorporating the real whole food aspect of everything that I do. It wasn't always that way. When I started in 2004, my first meals, kind of that first week, was luncheon meats and American cheese and dipping them in mayonnaise. I realize now how horrible that was. But when you compare it to what I was eating, that was like delicatessen real food compared to what I was eating prior to that.
You just nailed it. That's why I didn't like Dr. Atkins, because people weren't eating healthy, real foods. They were eating it
Well, and
didn't.
here's the thing. I talked to his widow, who, Veronica Atkins, very sweet lady. And she said, oh, Bobby, that's what she called Dr. Atkins. Bobby always had grass-fed meats and organic vegetables. And I don't understand why people think he pushed kind of, lacking of food quality. I'm like, well, it wasn't explicit in his books, Mrs. Atkins. And she's like, well, he wanted to try to be inclusive to get people off the carbs. So that's why he didn't put it in there as explicitly as, say, the paleo people talk about grass-fed and organic and properly humanely raised, all that stuff. So I think now that we've had the blessing of hindsight and we've had the paleo world come on the scene and remind us why real food is so critical. That's why keto is so strong today. It's taking the best principles of what Dr. Atkins was talking about. It's refined them through the prism of paleoism. And now we have keto, where you have the marrying of both of these modalities into one beautiful diet that's helping so many people.
Perfect answer. Thank you. Brilliant. Now tell me about, because since I'm a trainer, I have to ask on the flip side, do you exercise? Where does exercise play a role for you?
Oh, I love HIIT training. I have this big tractor tire in my yard, and I've been posting it on Instagram Live quite a bit anytime I do it. And I'll do, when I first started, I was not able to do more than just a few sets without kind of gasping for air, which is the point of HIIT. And so I'm doing well with that. I love that. I got measurably stronger doing that. I do also enjoy just making play. I'm a big fan of Daryl Edwards and the whole primal play concept that he came up with. Are you familiar with Daryl?
I'm not.
Oh, okay. So primalplay.com is his website, and he's got some really cool things. But he thinks ancestrally the way that the body was meant to move was not to go to a gym and to do all the gym grunts and walking on the treadmill and all the things that is gym life. He thinks we should be getting outside. We should be making the world our gym. So kids, if you ever watch kids, they're climbing over things, and they're trying to balance on top of a fence, and they're doing all these things that are, they're not even thinking about it being exercise, but it's exercising their body. And so I'm a big fan of that kind of movement. And I'm learning to love being outdoors a little more, grounding in the process of it as well. So yeah, I'm a little eclectic in my exercise. I do a lot less formalized training, although I love swinging kettlebell as well. Um, I'm I would much rather lift heavy things than cardio. I don't like running, so that's kind of my that's my jam.
Okay, cool. I just had to ask since,
Of
when people were
course.
listening, it's sort of where I started was the exercise piece and exercise physiology and
Yes.
biomechanics and anatomy. And that's sort of my geek out science. I can go really crazy on that one, but it's all moved and progressed in biochemistry. And then we moved into psychology and spirituality. So, you and I could probably talk for another couple hours, and I just want to start this off. I do want to have you back if you're willing to talk about your book that's coming out in November, and we could even do that kind of soon, or we can wait. It's up to you. But I know that there's lots more that I want to talk to you about. If you had to give somebody who is still on the fence about trying a ketogenic diet, what resource, whether it be one of your books, or what advice would you give them if there's someone who, of course, has not hit the wall of I'm going to die, or someone just
Yeah.
died? You know what I mean? Right. We're not quite there emotionally yet. How would you encourage a person to give it a try?
I don't think they necessarily need to give it a try if they don't think they're ready, because until they're ready, JJ, they're not going to pay attention to anything I would say anyway. So if you come to that point in your life where you're like, you know what, I want to learn more. And I've seen this happen in my own family, Christine's family, they're Italian. And so we'd go see them. They're in Indiana. We'd go see them, and they'd have all their pasta. And of course, Christine and I are over here not eating that stuff. And they would eat every few hours, and we're not eating but maybe twice a day. And so that, what's wrong with you guys? Oh, we're just not hungry. Oh, you have to be hungry, and we're not hungry. And so we lived by example. And then in the last year, several of them, one had a heart attack. Another one just wanted to start living better because she's getting to that age where things are starting to go a little bit south in her health. And so now they're coming to us wanting to know. So, yes, I did write a resource on this very subject that if you are ready, that's why I wrote Keto Clarity, because nobody before that book had really taken the message of a ketogenic diet and put it in layperson language. Dr. Atkins got a little geeky when he started talking ketosis. A lot of the scientists and researchers that have been looking at ketogenic diets, they again go all really deep in the biochemistry, which I love. But the thing I love even more, JJ, is interpreting what all of that means to the person in the real world, which is what I did in Keto Clarity.
Okay, good. And here's one more question I got from the fans. Can't wait to listen. I'm curious how long you should be in keto and how to best transition in and out.
Well, if you're asking me, I don't think you ever need to transition in and out. If it's something you're choosing to do as a lifestyle, and if you have insulin resistance, it certainly should be what you should choose to do as a lifestyle. Now, if you're doing it as a hack for your paleo diet, maybe you're paleo right now and you just want to go into periods of ketosis, you could go in and out pretty much at will. If you want to do it once a week, get in it for a week, get out of it for a week, kind of cycling in the carbs to get in and out of ketosis. I don't see any downside to that. I can't personally do that. I have to stay in it pretty much all the time. But for me, it's really less about whether I'm in or out of ketosis. How am I look looking, performing, and feeling. And if subjectively I don't feel well, I know that I probably am eating either too much carbs or too much protein, and I need to really get serious about my ketosis. So I'm measuring it in the blood, and I'm seeing how I'm doing, and that's kind of my litmus test. But I don't think everybody needs to just get in and out of it willy-nilly. I think most people that are dealing with some kind of health issues, and you know it, you know if you're dealing with something, even if it's subjective in your mood, in how you feel, in energy levels, I think that person would probably stand to stay in ketosis as much as possible.
Good. Okay. Agreed. And yes, and I think some people see it as, well, you can't live on this. And I think I saw something on Facebook, somebody posted that researchers saying now that people on keto diets may not live as long or something. And I didn't even click through it because I thought, of course, someone's going to,
Yeah,
it's
it's an
only a matter of time.
epidemiological study. Yeah, it was an epidemiological study. We talked about that on my show, Keto Talk. Yeah, it was totally bogus.
Yeah, as is so many. It's the eye of the beholder. Who's researching and who's funding the research, and what,
Right.
how are you skewing the research? It's so interesting because research is really like interpretation. If you're looking for something, the likelihood is you'll find it, and if that's what your goal is, you're going to adjust the circumstances and situations to kind of get the desired result. So
If
it was
you're a
only.
hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, of course, I have 10 million more questions for you, but we need to wrap up this show because I want to be able to talk a little bit more specifically about the next book of yours I'm going to buy and go through and also experiment with, as well as some of the other recipes that we were talking before we started recording and I didn't catch it, is that when I knew I was going to be talking to Jimmy today on this podcast, I made one of the other recipes in the book, which is the porridge. And it's an apple, although I will confess, because I don't have the apple extract, I actually use some apples because I made an paleo apple crisp last night for dessert. One of my guests is a diabetic, and
Ooh.
while he eats bread and pasta, I said, and they were coming to my house for dinner, I said, what about dessert? And he said, oh no, I don't eat dessert because it's sugar. And I said, okay, well, you do know that all carbs turn to sugar. Oh yeah. Okay. I said, well, what if I was to make you a dessert that was sugar-free? Now, of course, it's not sugar-free because of the apples, but I did use stevia and other things to sweeten it up. And it was as little sugar as I could possibly make a dessert made of paleo apple crisp. So I had some left over, the apples. I'm like, well, I'll just throw those in there. And again, while I know it's not technically keto, it was close enough for today. And it was a delicious addition to a breakfast choice that I hadn't thought of before. So I appreciate your book. I plan on getting another, if not all of your books. Let's have another conversation. Jimmy, I really appreciate you answering my email and coming on my show.
Hey, it was my pleasure. I love talking this stuff. I'm super passionate about it, and it's very obvious. So are you.
I am. Thank you. So I appreciate everything. If you had to tell somebody where to go to find, is everything on one website, your podcast and your books?
Yes. So livinlavitalowcarb.com is kind of the mothership of everything that I do. Or if you just Google Jimmy Moore, the first 3 pages is literally all my stuff.
And what else do you offer besides your books and your podcast?
Oh, I'm always doing resources, some of which are free. So I've got this thing called ketowhiteboard.info. And on there, it's little short form 1-minute videos done in the white form. I do the voiceover work, and it explains things like what's the difference between ketosis and ketoacidosis. And so I do a 1-minute video that explains that. What about high cholesterol on a ketogenic diet? And I explain that in a 1-minute video. Now, obviously, you can't get extrapolation to the nth degree, but you whet people's appetite. And I saw this as an entry-level way of educating the public. Not charging anything for it, and really it's just a love project on my part. I just got tired of all the questions, and I thought, let's make little videos that we can send to people. So that's kind of a cool side project I'm doing. I also have a list of ketogenic doctors that people might want to look up to see if one is in their area. Ketogenicdocs.com is that website. And then I also have a vitamin line, ketoliving.com. There's so many projects I've got my fingers in right now. I'm trying to think of them all off the top of my head, but mostly it's the podcasting and the writing of the books that kind of keep me very busy.
So go to Livin, it's Livin, not living, Livin,
Yep.
LaVitaLowCarb.com. And that's where you'll find Jimmy and all his stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for downloading today's episode. If you want some more help and guidance, you can download a free copy of my latest book, The Invisible Fitness Formula, 5 Secrets to Release Weight and End Body Shame at jjflazanes.com/book.